Okay, in today's video, I want to talk about Kitchener stitch or grafting in pattern. So Kitchener stitch is a great way to join something seamlessly and leave very little evidence of your join. But it can be difficult to do when you have a combination of knits and purls together. Typically, we do Kitchener stitch with all knit stitches, and it's very nice and straightforward. And that brings me up to a little bit of a note about this video. This video does assume that you already are familiar with the Kitchener stitch and you are comfortable doing that and ready to tackle a little bit more advanced version. If you aren't familiar with the Kitchener stitch, see our show notes for a link to a video that shows you the basic Kitchener stitch when you're working with two sets of just plain knit stitches. So here we have our lovely ornamental cowl, which has this rich cable pattern going on in combinations of knits and purls. And it would be really spectacular if we could Kitchener this together, maintaining this stitch pattern. So we're going to endeavor to do just that. So I have here, this was the last row I worked, and my working yarn is attached right here. It's nice and squiggly because I actually went a little too far and had to rip back. And then over here is the stitches that were on hold from our provisional cast on, and I've returned them to a spare circular needle. And this is just what was left of my tail, so that's just gonna stay out of the way. Before you get started, you wanna make sure that you have your cowl laid open with you want the wrong sides facing once we pick up our work, and you don't want any twists in your work or you'll get an accidental phobias with a twist. And while it wouldn't be the end of the world, it's probably not the way you want to wear your cowl. Also, if you're not up for this technique, it certainly would be fine to finish this project with the regular Kitchener stitch. It is going to be still a beautiful seamless way to close it up. You can always wear that little part in the back of your neck when you're wearing your cowl. This is just something a little more advanced for fun. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to queue our stitches up. We've got our working yarn attached on the right here, and we're going to hold our needles parallel to each other in our left hand, just like this. And I've got my end of my long tail threaded on my tapestry needle. I generally try to pull out at least 3 times the length of the piece I'm Kitchenering in yarn before I cut. So hopefully we've got enough yarn of our end cut here. And the general mantra, and don't worry, I'm going to repeat this over and over and over again, for Kitchenering in pattern is same off, opposite on. Now I'm going to explain what that means in just a second, but that will be what we do over and over and over as we work across this. We will do same off, opposite on. Okay, let's talk about what that means. Okay, so right here, we're going to look at this stitch as it's facing us, and we can see this was a knit stitch, which means we want to take it off in the same way. We're going to use our tapestry needle here to go into this stitch as if to knit and pull the stitch off. So that's what we mean by same off. Now that was our last stitch made, so it's really loose, so I'm just going to tug that up really quick. And now opposite on means we're going to look at the next stitch, and we can see here, because of that little noose around its neck, it's a purl. So we want to go into the stitch in the opposite way, but we're going to leave this one on the needle and pull our yarn through. So the opposite of a purl is a knit. So we go in as if to knit, that's opposite. And now we're going to pull our yarn through. We don't want that one to fall off, so I'm going to hold on to it with my thumb while I pull. So we've done one set of stitches on the front needle, and now we need to do the same for the back. So now we're going to look at this stitch as it's facing us, which, yes, this is the wrong side facing us, and this is a purl stitch here. So we're going to do same off, which means we're going to go in as if to purl and slip this stitch off with our tapestry needle. Then we look at our next one on the needle, and that's a knit. So we want to do opposite and leave it on. So the opposite of a knit is a purl. So we're going to go into this one as if to purl and leave that stitch on and pull our yarn through. So let's give that a pull. Again, I'm using my pointer finger of my left hand to keep that stitch in place and make sure it doesn't fall off of the needle. Get my tail out of there. There we go. We have our first set accomplished. Now you may have noticed that the stitches on your back needle where your provisional cast on was, they look a lot like knits and purls, but then some of them look a little weird. And that's correct. That's because when you do a provisional cast on, what you get back when you put those stitches back on a needle is actually a half of a stitch. And so we generally are following the same stitch pattern we know we've been knitting, and generally looking at them and identifying them as knits and purls. But you're correct, they are half off, and so sometimes they look a little bit different. Okay, so we're back to the front needle, and we had a purl here, which we just, you know, we treated in that previous step. So we're going to do same off, which means we're going to go in as if to purl and lift it off. And now we have a knit here, so we want to do opposite on. So we're going to go in as if to purl, which is the opposite of a knit, which is what we're looking at, and we're going to pull our yarn through. And again, my tail wants to be part of the action. Gonna get that out of the way. Okay, now we're gonna do the back needle, and we had a knit here, so we want to do the same and lift it off. We go in as if to knit and pull it off. And now we have a purl here, so we want to do opposite and leave it on. So we're going to go in as if to knit, which is the opposite, and pull the yarn through. All right, that tail is dead set on getting in on this action. Stay over here. Okay. Next up, we are at a knit stitch right here in the front. So we're going to go in as if to knit and lift that stitch off. Then we have a purl right here, so we want to do the opposite and leave it on. So we're going to go in as if to knit again and leave that one on. And then in the back here, we had a purl stitch, so we want to go in as if to purl and lift it off. And then we have a knit stitch, so we want to do the opposite, in as if to purl and leave it on and pull through. Now make sure when you're pulling your yarn through that you don't do what I've got going on right here, which is getting that yarn caught over one of your two needles. See how it was over the top right here? So make sure that it stays down and coming from kind of in between. We'll do a few more and then we'll stop and take a look at a work. All right, so we have a purl stitch here, which means we want to go in the same and off, same off. And then we have a knit here, which means opposite and on. So we go in as if to purl, leave it on and pull through. All right, and then in the back here, we had a purl, so we want to do same and lift and off. So we're going to go in as if to purl and off, and opposite and leave it on, which means we go in as if to knit and pull it through. Okay, so now we almost have enough to take a look at here. So periodically when you're doing the Kitcher stitch, not snitch, it's always a good idea to stop and take a look at your tension and make sure that you're not pulling overly tight and creating a bit of a pucker or a distorted look. And you can kind of pull slack back by pulling horizontally and then tug a little vertically to see those stitches settle into each other, and it looks really good. I think it's a little strange right here because of these slip stitches that were our edge. That's fine. No one's ever going to see that. But you can see our knits are generally aligning and our purls are generally aligning. So we're going to continue working across as we go using that same mantra, same off, opposite on. And that refers to how the stitches are facing you, presenting, both from this side, the front, the right side of your work, and on this needle, the wrong side of your work. So happy Kitchenering, and let's just do a few more stitches. All right, we're down to our last two stitches, and we're going to finish these off with going in as if to knit and going in as if to purl, because both of those were sames. And now that we're all done, we're going to just give our work a little bit of tugging back and forth to get the stitches to even out and lay nicely. And you can see we've got a fairly nice, needs a little blocking, seamless seam here, and more importantly in our reversible fabric, it looks seamless on the reverse as well. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on Kitchenering in pattern, and we'll see you in our next video.